If you're just now tuning us for the next session, welcome. Come on in. My name is Danielle Washburn, a part of the Digital Innovation team. And this next session, if we can click over to the schedule, is NTI, our tool empowering classroom culture from our DEP resource teachers. So welcome, DEP resource teachers. I am so glad that you all are here.
Hello, everyone. How are we today? I hope great.
Yep. And then here, and then click on CC, and you're good to go.
Okay. So, are you ready for NTI, providing racial equity through empowering classroom culture? Okay, Kanita. So, welcome. Hello, my name is Shashray McCormack, and I am the DEP resource teacher for Zone 2. And I am going to ask you to be sure to use the chat box where I have my other colleagues available to answer some of your questions. So I want you to use the chat box to ask questions or speak up about what limitations NTI creates, what issues of equity NTI spells for JCPS students and families, and any other issues you feel like you want to be able to bring up while I am presenting to you. Okay, Kanita, we can move forward. So in this session, our objectives are honor students and their experiences, and also honor students and their families. I want to quickly point out the image in the middle of Albert Einstein. It says, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life believing that it is stupid. And unfortunately, that's how some of our students felt prior to this remote learning, or what I would like to say crisis learning, and how some may even feel now if their experiences are not recognized or honored. And one thing about Albert Einstein in particular, he spoke a lot against racism, and he actually visited Lincoln University in 1946 to teach a physics lesson to African Americans at Lincoln. Okay, you can move forward. That's just a little message for you there. So are you ready for NTI? This is the one-pager that should be available in the NTI portal. It has been shared with AICs, it has been shared with assistant SUPs, and it has been shared with schools as well. So today is the last day of, not the last day, but the last section of our tool section of empowering classroom culture. Thank you, Kanita. So, are you empowering classroom culture from the spaces where students are working? So, of course, we're not in the classroom anymore. We know students are working at kitchen tables, they're working in their bedrooms, they're working in all different spaces. So, we want to talk about some critical practices for NTI. And the number one piece here that we're going to talk about is honoring students' experiences. So, you see there are two lines that are crossed out because for the purpose of what I'm going to be talking about, I will not really be spending time talking about those other pieces, but honoring experiences, students' experiences, shared inquiry and dialogue, and social and emotional safety. And this is all connected to the critical practices that teaching tolerance has for an anti-bias education. Thank you, Kanita. So, are you JCPS? So this is a hashtag that I would like, our team would like for our teachers to use when they are affirming racial equity, because the R stands for affirming racial equity. When they are affirming and recognizing the value of race and culture and relationship building with students and families. And it's important to make sure we include families because families are a part of our students. And also, that our teachers' relationships found being the foundation for a safe, healthy experience during this pandemic. So right here, there are two images that I have added here. The worksheet that you see is really more for elementary school. However, it can be modified to fit the needs of your students. But I want to point out a very important piece here. It is called Louisville versus Dorona. And this is sponsored by the Louisville Urban League. And this is a great way for students to be honored and their experience to be honored. In this particular piece here, students are able to have songs, poetry, cooking, dance, art, whatever they would like, because in this moment they are honoring where they are and how they feel at this moment during Corona. Kanita, if you can please click on honoring student experiences for me. So this takes you to the documented teaching tolerance that kind of focuses on classroom culture. And again, since we're not in a classroom, we're talking about developing the culture for where students are right now. And one of the most important pieces is the social identity and personal experiences of our students. So Kanita, if you can just kind of, go through that a little bit so people can get an idea and see what this particular link is talking about. Here we have community study or a student-led walking tour, which I'll talk about that soon. This is also a place where you're going to talk about social and emotional health of students. Okay, we can go to the next, Kanita, please. So how do you do this? This is one of the things that those two images in the prior slide addresses: the identity of our students, the diversity, the justice, and the action. The big piece is moving towards action. Again, Teaching Tolerance has an awesome resource of social justice standards that can really be broken down with identity, diversity, justice, and action. And if you could just click on that real quick, Kanita, so people can get an idea. It's a PDF. It's free. Sometimes you can actually contact them. They'll send you one in the mail for free. We have been passing different things out to some of our friends, but it is broken down from K through 12, and it gives you specific anchor standards and domains for each of anchor standards for each of those domains. And they are lovely. I absolutely love them. They're really good to plan with. They give you scenarios, outcomes, all of those things. Thank you, Kanita. We can go to the next one. So as I was researching and just trying to figure out how are we really actually, what can we get teachers to understand about meeting the needs of our students? I came upon this pyramid by a principal in Arkansas where he compares it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And of course, we know anybody in education has learned Maslow, but school is important during this crisis. We all understand that school is very important, but not as important as making sure we are meeting the needs of our families, that we are addressing what they are feeling in the right now. The whole idea of the new normal is really the right now. This is not normal. This is not a normal that we want to be a part of. This is the right now. This is a crisis, and we have to get an understanding of what students and their families are needing, what they are dealing with, and we do that, as we talked about prior, to building relationships. All of my colleagues have talked about building relationships from the beginning when we go into our schools and we meet with our principals and AICs and everyone else about building relationship. Because unfortunately, right now, teachers are trying to build relationships with students that they were not trying to build relationships with when they were in the classroom. So what is happening to students during this NTI moment, this remote learning, this crisis moment, where teachers are taking time to learn what is going on with their students? So, hey, Shashray, do you have some strategies? Of course I do. So we have strategies to honor students' experiences. So read aloud, selective vulnerability, community study. So first, Kanita, if you can please, let me share first the two images before I have you to click on the read aloud text. The two images at the bottom are very important. This is from a website called First Books. And when we talk about read alouds, they are offering right now free you can download their app and get 10 ebooks for free for 56 days. One awesome thing about these ebooks is that they are culturally relevant. They are inclusive of all cultures. They are in different languages, and they recognize the differences amongst our students. And also they have something called the Diversity and Inclusion Project there. So Kanita, if you can go ahead and click on the read aloud text link. And this particular link was created by some of my wonderful NCTE colleagues. And there are online resources, again, in different languages. There are literacy resources. There are resources on science, art, math, all different kind of things. They have, again, there's online indigenous education, K through 8. There are people on here reading books to students. There's actually an organization called Homies, which is an organization of gang members that have actually started trying to make connections in education to prevent kids from getting into gangs. They're reading. So there are all different kind of resources here that you can look at that will help you in your planning and honoring students' experiences. So selective vulnerability, that is when we're talking about sharing age-appropriate personal anecdotes. You know, us as educators, we have our own crises that we are dealing with. And I think that kids need to see the humanity in you. And that will make them feel comfortable in their space to be able to share information with you. They're not just going to, some kids may not be open, or families to be so open to automatically share all information with you. But if you are able to say, look, I understand, I have these things going on with my family. So there is some kind of connection. Kids can make a connection with you. Also, Kanita, if you would click on community study. Here with the community study, this is actually, there's art all over Louisville, Kentucky, but particularly in areas like Smoketown, which is considered one of the poorest zip codes in Louisville, Kentucky, which is also being gentrified, which could also be a lesson to talk to students about why it's being gentrified and why there are actually families being pushed out of those neighborhoods. There are beautiful artwork and art pieces that kids can to bring about emotion based off of what they see and what they're dealing with in their community. A good way of making a connection with the community. I know that there are certain images now, art, that kids are dressing up like the particular piece of art and talking about it. So this is a great resource to be able to use.
I was also going to say that I live in that area, and sometimes I take my daughter and my son. We just go through and look at the different artwork, and sometimes it can be a great history lesson, even though she's in
Absolutely.
kindergarten and, you know, he's only 3 years old. But if we start out little, then they will, learn about their history and learn about their neighborhood that they live in.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you said that, Danielle, because it's so important. History is the reason why we have the disproportionalities that we have now. History is why we have a racial equity pillar. And I understand that the conversation of race is very uncomfortable for a lot of people to talk about, but we have to have these conversations because this new normal that we're speaking of, inside this new normal, racism is still very strong. We have racism bombings within Zooms. We have kids that are making their screens black while we have authors reading books and calling them the N-word. There are so many different type of racial things that are happening. You know, yesterday was the first day of Ramadan, and there are still racist acts being hurled at our Muslim brothers and sisters, and we have got to have conversations about about that.
I agree. And Lamanda Moore also said that students can use these murals to discuss how it makes them feel. So like you were saying that, you know, student feelings are important, like especially during this crisis. Like it's so important to ask your teenagers, ask your kindergarten, how do you feel? What do you need supports with? So I won't take any more of your time, so you can go.
No, but you are right. That is very important. And it brings us like the perfect slide to bring to. So are you JCPS? Are you aware of the sensitivity to the needs of students and families? Are you aware of the racial incidents that are happening right here in Louisville, Kentucky and around the country? Because guess what? Every plant has their own requirements in order to grow, and so do people. So there are families that are dealing with issues with having one Chromebook for 5 kids in their home. And so they're trying to focus on schoolwork, but then they're also focused on the fact that they've lost their jobs. There's mental health issues that families are having to deal with. Families have so many different needs, but you wouldn't know that if you have not tried to reach out and spend time and find out what is it that your families need. What are the things that your students need? What are the things that your students are dealing with? I also have linked here because I want to make sure I pause for a second to give time for conversation and for whatever may be coming up in the chat. But while we do that, I'm going to ask Kanita to click on Letter to Parents from a Principal. This is a letter that a principal sent to his or her, I'm not for sure if the principal is male or female, parents regarding COVID-19 and talking about how we are not homeschooling. We are like in a crisis, and recognizing and understanding to give yourself grace. So Shay just talked about having this calendar to talk about mindfulness. We have to also be mindful in the humanity of our students, the humanity of people, the humanity of the right now and of what people are dealing with. So it's your opportunity if you guys can click on that and read that, because I think it's very powerful. Okay, Kanita. So we are all in the same storm, this storm of COVID-19. But we are not in the same boat. Some of us are in yachts. We're sitting nice. We're not worrying about where we're going to eat. Some of us are trying to go golfing when some of us are trying to get jobs. Some of us are trying to go get their hair done and nails done and so on and so forth. That is not what's important to people and to students and families that have lost a loved one or who have lost a job or who have a lot of issues that they have in their home right now. The hunger, the trauma, the mental health, the abuse, job loss, housing insecurity, illness. But guess what? Why? As we talk about this, why is it their housing insecurity? Are teachers familiar with redlining? Are they familiar with gentrification? Are they familiar with these essential workers? They're now essential workers now, but prior they were just restaurant workers. They were just grocery store workers. Having conversations with students about the historical factors as to why we are in the situation that we're in now. Okay, Kanita. So I want to share these 2 videos from Pharrell Williams. For those of you who are not familiar with him, he is a artist, a hip hop artist, a philanthropist. He is involved in so many things, but he has said some very powerful things during a interview with Jimmy Fallon that I really would like for you guys to listen to and reflect on. So if we can push the first one, hopefully we can hear it.
Are they getting the help? There's access. You know, there's historical injustices with healthcare, with, you know, people of color. And those things systemically contribute to the disproportionate access. but this is definitely affecting people of color in a different kind of way. And I appreciate you asking me this question so that we can use your platform so, you know, we can get it out there. We're human beings, you know.
Yeah.
If we were to be treated like that from the very beginning, we wouldn't have disproportionate problems, but we do.
Yeah, you can pause right there. So let's stop right there. So what he said to me that was very powerful. Can you guys still hear me?
We can. Yeah, we can.
That's very powerful is that if we were treated as human beings from the beginning, we would not be in the situation that we're in. And basically, we're talking about historical factors as to why it is affecting the Black families the most. And especially with the deaths of COVID-19 is why. So now the conversations are being had, but we cannot have those conversations until we talk about those historical factors as to why that it has happened. So the second video, Danielle, is another part that actually should start at maybe around 6:50, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
To be done in education, because as we talk about, you know, homeschooling, something you and I know about, there's other families out there and lots more families out there that are, again, disproportionately affected. And right now it's estimated that like 91% of the world's children are going to be out of school. And obviously the most marginalized kids, you know, are going to, you know, in the most poverty-stricken areas are the ones that are going to be affected the most.
So that's where we are. It's kids that look like my kids. It's kids that make up a nice percentage of students in JCPS. But this image here was painted by Kadir Nelson. And if you are not familiar with Kadir Nelson, he has illustrated a lot of culturally relevant books. And the most recent that some of you may be familiar with is Undefeated. His artwork is magnificent. But this image he has drawn is called After the Storm. And this is homework for teachers or anybody watching this. What emotions does this image strike up for you? What do you see? And is this what we want to see as our new normal? Because we cannot go back to what we were doing before. And we have to co-create with both our students and our families if we want everyone, all people, to be successful. So I hope that this was beneficial. Please, if you have any questions or any concerns regarding the NTI our tool that we've created, we have Katia Turner, which is Zone 1, myself, Zone 2, Lamanda Moore Rodriguez, Zone 3, Kanita Ballard, AIS Elementary, Rachel Klein, Middle School, and Avon Cook High School. So our DEP resource teachers are here. We're here to have conversations with you. And this is not a blame game. This is a time for us to really do what our racial equity pillar is here for. And we're here to have those conversations with you.
Yes, thank you. And, you know, I look forward to those conversations. And for example, Sade Graves in the chat, she says that we as educators are used to having to cover content standards. So it is natural that teachers feel like that they have to fit everything in, but there is no testing. So the game has changed. And I totally agree that also we need to be mindful of what we are covering. And you have provided a lot of resources to teach and help learn to everyone. And there were a couple other questions as well. And I know the DEP team took great care of those questions to help those first year teachers and those substitute teachers of how do I even begin? Where do I start? What is a good starting point for me to one, maybe first realize what I need to do on the inside, and then, or maybe not even inside, just what I need to do to effectively,
reflection is very important.
Yes.
You know, it's very important to look at yourself in the mirror and say, what is it that I need to do within myself?
Yeah. Right? And then I think after reflecting, then you can go out and incorporate some of those tools and teach your students. And you can still teach your students all these tools even through the NTI process.
Absolutely. And real quick about, as we talk about grades and standards and so on and so forth, again, this is a time for us to tear down just look at the history of education in general. Take some time to really look at how education, public education, from a historical standpoint, is where we are. Where's our feedback to our students? Because students are always learning.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And it won't, I know I keep saying comments, but really, truly, if you do have time, you should definitely go back and check the chat. And I know Joseph Ellison, EA of high school, he just said, thank you, DEP, for continuing to challenge our mindsets and paradigms to help us best serve all of our students. And I ditto that. I totally agree. Thank you all for that great conversation. And, you know, when you first started off, race is not easy to talk about, and it's definitely not. But it does take people like you, like us, like everyone to step out there and talk about that tough conversation to effectively and efficiently teach our students and show them the love and compassion that we have for all of our students.
Right. And you can't say you love your students if you're not willing to get to know who they are and give them space. You can't say that you love them if you're not doing that. You can't say you love them if you cannot have the conversation about race. You cannot.
I agree.
So
I feel like we could talk about hours on
yes. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone. For those who are coming after me, good luck to you guys. And again, we're here. Thank you.